Today, I'm going to show you guys what 2024 is going to look like. Everybody wants to know. This is going to be the year a lot of crypto investors make a lot of money.
Everything will be tokenized. Driver's licenses, passports, marriage certificates, college degrees, certifications, concert tickets, plane tickets, mortgages, deeds, car titles, adoption papers.
We will not see a hard or soft landing in 2024.
The fourth Bitcoin halving in 2024 will see minimal market disruption and a post-halving rise in Bitcoin's price with significant gains for some low-cost miners.
We are counting down to finally potential U.S. spot Bitcoin ETF approval and potentially conversion of GBTC from a trust into a physically backed ETF.
Welcome to the Money Panda, hosted by Elvis Kolawole.
Hello, everyone. You're welcome to the Money Panda, and we are at the end of the year 2023. Would you believe it? This year that took so much and taught so much. Would you actually believe that we're absolutely here? And well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm very glad to have my guest, Brian Naughton. Today we are going to talk about the outlook for 2024. And Brian is an experienced writer in the crypto space. He publishes a newsletter that I love so much. It's called In Crypto. And he publishes so much other content and lots of his thoughts on different platforms. Brian, I'm so glad that you're here. And I'm glad that we are where we are and you've not absolutely lost your mind. How does it feel not to have lost your mind?
Thanks, Elvis. Yeah, great to be here. And
congratulations,
yeah, nice.
Honestly, on not losing your mind.
Yeah, well, we made it through the one of the toughest bear markets on record, I think.
Yeah. So, Brian, real quick, before we go right in, I'd like you to tell the audience about yourself, what your work has been like within the crypto space, where you write, and yeah, just a bit of an intro into you.
Sure, yeah. I've been following Bitcoin and crypto pretty much since the beginning, but only as a kind of an interested observer. And then during the COVID lockdowns in the UK, quite a lot of my traditional work, which was involved in investment outreach, communications campaigns for governments in emerging markets, kind of dried up. And I had some time on my hands and decided to do just a load of research on crypto and Web3 in lieu of a professional pivot into the space. So yeah, so I've been working in crypto now in terms of writing, copywriting, leadership communications, publishing my own content, etc., for the last couple of years. And a highlight was being part of a team that put together a report for the Financial Conduct Authority on novel activities in DeFi.
Wow.
And yeah, that was very interesting because we spoke to a lot of experts off the record, and then we acted as a kind of we acted as the kind of the sort of the barrier so that they could be frank with us, and then it was anonymized, so the material that we passed on to the FCA wasn't going to preclude people from speaking their mind, basically. So we got some very interesting material, and yeah,
awesome.
As you know, it's a very complicated area, DeFi and blockchain bridges and oracles and so on. So it's kind of a baptism of fire for me. But yeah, I continue to learn about all of the complexities of the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that we all continue to learn, and very, very importantly, you are doing something really good, which is, of course, contributing to policy and acting as a bit of a filter, I guess, from the rather frank thoughts of lots of us who tend to think like degens, I guess, and on creating policies that are really feasible and make lots of sense ultimately. So let's get into the meat of this episode. So first things first, I know we've had lots of conversations and you've had time to brood about it, and but I'd like to ask you, for you personally, what did the year 2023 represent for you? How does it leave you feeling about the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, 2022 was the real year when, you know, the everything went down with Terra Luna and then subsequently FTX, and the wheels came off the bus. And I think, you know, and people saying once again crypto's dead and all the rest of it. So 2023 for me was, well, it was a year that the US tried to take on and kill crypto on one level through the Biden administration and the SEC, but it was also a time for reflection and self-reflection from the industry and cleaning up and getting rid of all the scams and the bad players. I mean, obviously some scams and some bad players still exist, but I think it was kind of, it was represented a kind of coming of age of crypto, and you know, maybe a bit like the dot-com bubble burst, where VCs were throwing money at, you know, lots of ideas that weren't well thought through and all the rest of it. So 2023 was a necessary cutting away of all the dead wood in crypto, I think, and I feel like we're much stronger as a result. And we've also managed to kind of tackle some of the you know, regulatory doubt concerning crypto driven by the SEC and so on. They've been put on a back foot by overstepping their mandate. So I think we're in a much stronger position going forward into 2024.
Wow, yeah. And I think I do agree with you. Like on my own side, I think of it like a baptism of fire. Let me put it that way, you know? Or sorry, not just that, it's a baptism of fire. It's the very first baptism of fire where it felt like everyone was watching. You know, like there were different times, you know, for example, when the Mount Gox exchange like went up in flames, when, you know, the ICO era like came to an end, when, you know, so many things happened over the last decade, and like lots of people were saying, oh yeah, crypto is done, crypto is done. But then, I mean, at that time, it felt like there wasn't so much to lose if crypto was going to be done. Not so many people cared anyway. But then all of a sudden, everyone cared. Everyone, from foreign governments to, you know, enemies of different states to big financial corporations to retail investors, everyone was watching this time, you know, to see if, you know, the space actually survives this. Everyone was really watching this baptism of fire live. And I think it's a testament, yeah, and it's a testament that, you know, the space has actually been able to surpass all of this, or at least not necessarily surpass, actually survive, just survive, because the survival is really like it's a great foundation for other things. So yeah, something else I'd like to ask you, what's your biggest prediction for 2024? What do you see happening in 2024? Like, is there like something in particular, like a way you see the space going? Do you think it remains like this, you know, barely surviving, but not exactly exploding? You know, what do you think happens?
No, I mean, I think there's a step change really, and you can quite clearly demarcate it between 2023 and 2024. I mean, there are a couple of things really. I think the first of which is we're witnessing the, you know, the mainstreaming of crypto, the arrival of institutional capital. We had
Those guys.
we had the CME Open Futures Index on Bitcoin flip Binance recently, and you know, essentially what that means is that institutional capital is now going to dominate crypto. It's overtaken retail, and obviously with the arrival of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, everyone is, you know, it's like a racing certainty now that they arrive. I think, you know, so we're beyond that point where crypto can be put back in the box. It's here. And also the interesting thing is, in spite of SBF and all the rest of it, and the misunderstandings about the differentiation between crypto as a kind of a decentralized universe and centralized players like, you know, Three Arrows Capital and FTX and so on, the centralized exchanges. You've also got big companies, Visa, you know, IBM, PayPal, all, even Google. Seriously, now they've got their heads around blockchain, and they realize it's not just a flash in the pan, and they understand it's not just about magic internet money or speculating on altcoins, or they understand that it's a new form of technology which is very powerful in terms of a new internet of value. So and then I think also the other trend for me is a move away from it being a speculative asset class worth, you know, well, after the crash worth kind
Are
of,
you sure?
it's now worth what 1.4 trillion. No, but I predict this as a trend, which is that we're now moving towards use cases and utility. You know, we're going to have blockchain ticketing, NFTs are going to be maturing into a technology and an asset class which isn't governed by pixelated JPEGs, for example. And we'll have things like blockchain gaming. We'll have things like decentralized social media. So I think we're at the beginning of a turn from crypto being a purely speculative asset class into actually being something that has utility.
Okay. Okay.
You seem unsure about that.
Yeah, like I want to go off script here because like all of a sudden like it raises some questions, right? For example, the as you know, for example, blockchain gaming, domains, although that's a poor example, um, and a lot of these things they sort of existed, you know, in 2022, and they existed. A lot of the platforms that do a lot of these things kind of exist already as we speak. Like, what's the biggest difference between, you know, such a boom happening now and such a boom happening, say, 2023? Perhaps could it just be another case of, or in my opinion, what I feel is, could it just be that the main difference is just that there is more institutional money, and very importantly, interest rates, especially in the US, stabilize, and there's all of a sudden there's cheaper money everywhere, or basically macroeconomic factors basically get better. And because of macroeconomic factors, all of a sudden people are less risk averse, and that helps these companies thrive. That's how it feels to me. But you agree? Like how
Yeah, I mean, I still think that's the major thing to focus on this time round. I mean, you've mentioned the macro picture, and we've recently had the FOMC meeting, and it kind of sounds now like the market is pricing in interest rate reductions next year, and also it's an election year, and so we're likely to see more quantitative easing and more liquidity in the system, and a stronger appetite for risk on assets. So that's definitely one component. And then you can look at the Bitcoin halving as being a major driver. The fact that over 70% of Bitcoin is now in the hands of long-term holders. So you could look to supply shocks, and more recently the change, or the future change to the financial accounting standards that were lobbied for by Michael Saylor, which come online at the end of next year. But that is going to allow major institutions to hold Bitcoin on their books without being penalized in accounting terms for doing so. So, and we haven't yet really seen the arrival of retail investors based on a lot of metrics like Google Analytics and search stats and so on. So that's yet to come. So I kind of see it as a perfect storm of all of these things coming together. The utility aspect is a slightly different argument, but it's one that I see in terms of the maturing of the space.
Okay. I love that. Oh yeah. In terms of maturing of the space, actually there's something you were just saying, and something I'm just realizing as we're just exchanging. Like, what about the fact that there's still so much correlation between the market's activity and stuff that happens in America? Isn't it a bit strange how much, you know, activities that should be uniquely American actually like affects pretty much everything? Stuff like the election, you know, like you're in the UK, I'm in Nigeria. Like, I shouldn't like, you know, be you know, like on my heels about this stuff, but then I know that it actually matters. So do you think, you know, possibly next year is the year when that sort of wanes, that influence sort of wanes, especially given the fact that the SEC has had such a chokehold, you know, fighting crypto so much? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of odd, isn't it? You know, I mean, I've wondered why, for example, jobs figures should matter a jot to a global industry like crypto. It's kind of insane on
Yeah,
one level. I mean, and I don't know if it's a
it's
self-fulfilling
wild.
prophecy. because everyone's watching and everyone's on Twitter Spaces talking about what Jerome
Same
Powell's going to
stuff.
say and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you've got this new crypto exchange M2 opening up in UAE. I think the balance of power and influence is going to shift away from the US. Well, I mean, it very much depends on whether or not they come to the table with reasonable, regulatory structures or not. Because if they don't, then, crypto's like water, in the sense that it will find its own level. It's a global, it's borderless. So if the States pushes it too far, I mean, I'm sure they're already losing projects to Singapore and Hong Kong and UAE as we speak, and London even as we speak. So, and we've had Mika in the European Union. So, there's a certain sense in which there's regulatory arbitrage going on as well. If the States don't want to come to the table with proper regulation, then the industry will find other hubs to gravitate towards, and I think that's already happening.
Which is quite a shame, isn't it? But at the same time, like I said, it's always very strange, like how so much of the narrative, sometimes so much of the hope, in quote, is really hinging on, for example, what Jerome Powell says, and it's like, gosh, man, like it's really it's almost like some first what's the name, main character. It gives off main character syndrome, which has been like a huge theme of the entire 20th century. But I'm like, wow, are we going to move into the decentralized age with this same mentality? And it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. I haven't kind of thought about it deeply before, but it's kind of fascinating, really. It's probably worth returning to in terms of thinking more deeply and writing about it or something.
Yes, please. You should write about it. You should write about it. If you do, if you do talk about the fact that you're inspired to hear. Okay, yeah. Okay, so aside from some de-Yankeeization, I just made that up. And a bit of utility, and possibly, of course, a bit of a bull run on the horizon. What else do you feel could be a trend that we could look forward to in terms of technology? I think there's some technological trends that I might see pop up in my head, but are there any trends you're looking forward to in particular in 2024?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've already mentioned two trends that I think,
Okay.
and maybe you're right, maybe it's not this cycle, but I definitely think decentralized social media, and I don't see a huge amount of evidence. There's Lens Protocol and there's a few other things, and we had that sort of friend tech kind of experiment and all the rest of it. But when people talk about Web3, they talk about Web3 through the lens of what Web2 is, and Web2 is has such influence over our lives, and we're increasingly moving into this digital universe, and it's based on them maintaining gatekeeper status and choke points over data and our social graph and all the rest of it. So if we're talking about Web3 and what it really means, ultimately the primary use case for Web3 is to break Web 2.0. So where's the decentralized social media? I see that as being just central to the whole shtick, really. You know what I mean? So that's one. Blockchain gaming, I think, is a no-brainer, but it's not about building blockchain games. It's about the AAA games implementing whatever in-game assets, for example. So I think really we need a breakthrough AAA game on the blockchain rather than a blockchain game, like whatever, Axie Infinity or that kind of stuff. So and sooner or later, one of those is going to pop up.
I
It's only a question of time. Maybe it's this cycle, and maybe it's not. And then the third thing I would say, I don't do so because all the crypto bros are talking about AI now, but I think, and that is to say, not just because it's a kind of a narrative driven thing, but I believe there will be we can call it an AI economy, basically, in the same way that there's a social media economy, a content creators economy. An AI economy is not going to run on fiat rails. That's one point. It's going to run on crypto rails. And the other thing is, at the moment, I've called it AI 2.0, like OpenAI. ironically, OpenAI, which started as an open project,
Yeah,
is
is
now a commercial
definitely, yeah.
project that is backed by Microsoft. So the problem we have again is the centralization of data and the centralization of power. And with the virtuous cycle of these things getting exponentially more and more powerful and exponentially more and more ingrained in our lives, the centralization of those AI resources is like Web 2.0 on steroids, basically.
Mm,
So what I've been calling AI3, and this is just, it's because it's nice to
what?
talk about, is the same as Web3. AI3 is Web3 plus AI. So I think a decentralized infrastructure for AI is going to be increasingly important, and I think it will become a big narrative. Well, for the reasons I've suggested, which is that AI is not going to run on fiat rails; it's going to run on crypto rails, and we need some kind of decentralized plumbing, which Web3 provides.
Well, like the funny thing, I have actually thought about this, but I've never actually seen somebody dream up an entire ecosystem sort of built like that. In fact, did you just invent a buzzword, AI 3.0?
Yeah, well, maybe I've written about it before on LinkedIn, and no one seems to have paid a great deal of attention. It's just my way of trying to break down an idea, basically, which
Whoa.
is is OpenAI and Google and Meta. You understand they're all moving over to AI-driven search and large language models, and it's got, so that is AI 2.0. AI 1 in this case. Just to take the analogy further, AI 1 was the kind of AI that we didn't
Yeah.
even know existed. It's the stuff that's
Yeah.
used against us in the algorithms.
Yeah.
AI 2 is visible, it's above the surface, we're using the applications, but again, we're the commodity, we're the data set. So yeah, AI 3, let's call
Okay.
it that.
Okay. You just got me pumped. Like, wow, wow, wow. And yeah, I actually think I can see that because in the grand scheme of we picture Web 3.0 as a web that's much smarter, much autonomous, and a lot of it like definitely has to be AI powered. Oh yeah, that reminds me. You said one thing I want to touch on before we wrap up. Did you kind of, because you sort of said that for Web 2 to, sorry, for Web 3 to exist, there might need to, or sorry, maybe Web 2 might have to stop existing as it does currently. Does that sort of mean like Web 2 and Web 3 existing is a bit of a zero-sum game to you, like longer term?
I don't think it works like that, really. I mean, people are already talking about Web 2.5, which is, Web 2.0 companies adopting aspects of Web 3,
Yeah,
and also Web 3 sacrificing some of its decentralized nature. And in reality, quite a lot of Web 3 is actually based on Amazon Web Servers anyway. So
such a shame.
decentralization is a kind of continuum. So I don't see one replacing the other, but certainly in terms of social media, we need to move beyond these gatekeepers controlling our social graph and unpersoning us if they don't like what we say.
Wow, 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 wow. Okay, I fully agree with that. I can get on board with that. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. Oh my, I think I just got a new buzzword, and I'm starting to think about, what you just said about the intertwining of Web 2 and Web 3 elements, of course for Web 2.5, but also what that means for Web 3, and especially like the future of how we interact with the internet, especially with something like social media that we tend to interact with like on a daily basis. Like all of that has to change. When all of that changes, that's when we have the real Web 3.0. And that's when, utility is not just something we talk about. It's not just something that's conceptual, right? So I look forward to that. And I'm quite confident, as you said today, that that's something we'll move closer to in 2024. I think you have some last thoughts. I can feel it that you have a few thoughts to add to that, don't you?
I didn't really, but I'd like to underline the fact that I think NFTs are a much bigger deal than people
Yes,
are
yes,
envisaging they are at the moment.
yes,
It's not about
yes,
cartoon art.
yes,
It's not even just about art,
yeah,
as in visual art.
frankly, yeah,
It's about anything you can imagine.
yeah,
Everything from music to books to ticketing to new forms of software as a service.
Yeah,
Everything basically. So
yeah,
electronic
just
trade documents, the whole shebang. So
yeah.
if people think that NFTs is kind of like a fringe kind of gimmicky thing, I would encourage them to look a little deeper.
Yeah, I fully am on board with that. I think of NFTs as basically proof of ownership, basically a secure mode of documentation for pretty much everything, and everything is documented. So yeah, it's really just that. So yeah, I look forward to that happening. I'm very sure we're much closer to that in 2024. Um, so thank you so much for this talk. I've really loved it. I've enjoyed this, and I can tell like a lot of people might have a word with you when they hear some of these things you've had to say. I really appreciate you coming through, and for everyone who's still listening, this has been Brian Naughton, a crypto writer or Web3 writer. Perhaps I hate just saying crypto writer. Yeah, but he's a writer and he's the publisher of In Crypto and a researcher who does lots of research to advance the crypto space. And you've been listening to Money Panda. Have a wonderful rest of the year. Thank you so much for listening. Bye bye.